So this is for like I do this stuff. If you're new here, I do this stuff on stream where I watch various creators. Sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're negative, sometimes they're about Call of Duty, and sometimes they're not. This one and most that we are going to watch today just so happen to be about Call of Duty. But this one is by the Tactical Brit. And he made a video called Black Ops 6 Gunplay is Secretly Broken and Bad. And I wanted to see what this is about because I honestly have no idea where he's going to go with this. Because as a whole, I think the gunplay actually is one of the better things about the game. But if he knows something that I don't, that's what we're here for. I don't know why my Elgato always does that when I open things in full screen.
The days now to really sink my teeth into Black Ops 6's beta,
and he's got a beautiful British accent,
so like, that are working and understand the things that aren't working. And honestly, the more I play it and the more I try to understand the intricacies of it, the more I realize that the gunplay in Black Ops 6 is possibly some of the worst we've seen in a while.
Interesting.
Now, there are some really intelligent decisions being made here in terms of what they're trying to achieve, but I also feel like they're being offset by some really weird decisions that aren't quite working as intended. For those of you who have played the beta...
So, what I'm hoping from this video is I'm hoping that I actually learn something from this and come out of it being like, either I like the gunplay more or this needs to be fixed, because this is the first I have heard of this.
Some of you might be realizing now that the gunplay for this game generally feels quite inconsistent, and I think there are a number of
some people are saying that. I didn't notice that, but I've heard people say that.
I don't think this is unfixable. This isn't the doom and gloom end of the world video. These are very much fixable things that can be achieved before this game releases. But all of this took a while, compiling, testing, doing things, and if you do enjoy this video, drop a like, consider subscribing, and you'll see plenty more of this. First and foremost, the center dot for the entire game is not completely centered correctly. You notice this really drastically with sniper scopes, but just generally with pretty much any weapon, you can point your center dot at a wall and then aim down sight, and you will notice a misalignment between the center dot and also what the gun is actually doing.
Is he going to show this?
This means that sniping feels especially really weird and inconsistent at times, and it feels like shots that probably look like they should have landed actually didn't, and long-range micro-adjustments for weapons in terms of countering recoil and trying to get better shots on a player also just doesn't seem to work properly. This is definitely
so, in other words, the center of where your hip spread isn't where the center of your reticle goes. I could be wrong, but I believe we've had that before in Call of Duty.
Keyboard players more who use their absolute center with their keyboard and mouse flicks, but even as a controller player, I was noticing that things weren't hitting when it felt like they should, and I do pin this down to the fact that
there were a couple of moments in the beta where I aimed down sights and thought I was hitting someone, and then when I look back at the gameplay, I actually wasn't shooting at them, and I'm wondering if it was because of this. Shadowstorm, what's up, dude?
Scuffed. It also seems to be completely random to a bunch of different weapons. I actually think SMGs seem to have different alignments to snipers, so on and so forth, and it just doesn't feel like the center dot is doing what it's supposed to be doing, and this is something that absolutely needs to be fixed by the time this game releases. When your aim isn't centered with the center dot, it just means that you're not building the muscle memory.
Actually, let's go back like just a quick second here.
You should be building whilst playing this game.
I want to show you something.
It also means that you can't accurately...
That right there, I don't know if you can see that, but right beside that kill skull is what he's talking about by the center dot. And I wish he actually had gameplay of him testing this, but he is saying when you aim in and look through your sniper scope, for example, the center of your sniper scope does not line up with that. And unfortunately, the beta is now like closed until tomorrow, so I can't go in and test this right now.
Where you're going to fire at somebody from hip to ADS transition. Now, the ADS transition itself is also a little bit busted at the moment.
I agree with that.
Transition doesn't work, and that is hopefully something that will also be fixed by the time the game releases. The second big thing in this game is that there is too much general sway in pretty much every single animation, whether it's visual recoil or
this is a complaint that people have with this Black Ops as a whole, as a series. As you watch his gameplay, watch his hands. Or watch the character's hands as they run.
Moving your gun and firing simultaneously, there is just a lot of visual punch going on that doesn't make a lot of sense.
See how like the gun is moving
and
like
frustrating of all of these random visual things that go on and occur within the game. And I'm not just talking about visual recoil, I'm also talking about some of the animations whilst aiming down sight, is this weird judder. And I've noticed this a lot on some guns where when you aim down sight, it's as though the gun goes to the left and then recenters itself whilst you're aiming.
The gun I noticed that the most with was the AK-47. That AK-47 is weird.
ADSing. As if at the end of the ADS animation, there's some sort of, okay, now I'm going to lock into a fixed position.
Yes.
It's really
I did
kind of
notice
annoying
this
because you just don't actually know when your gun is ADS'd enough to actually lay down accurate fire. And I find that using certain attachments alleviates some of these sway problems with the animations.
That's exactly what I said on my stream. Word for word, that is what I said on my stream. And I said the one that I noticed the biggest difference with wasn't ADS, it was sprint to fire. So I don't know if it's going from sprinting to aiming or sprinting to shooting that messes it up more. But yes, I completely agree with them. As soon as I put like ADS and sprint to fire attachments on, I stopped noticing that on the AK. I couldn't even use the AK before I had that. That's so true.
Without them. The precision underbarrel, for example, is a huge example of a single attachment which can radically make you feel far more accurate in this game because it massively reduces the amount of scope sway and visual sway in the game.
Oh, I didn't try any
honestly,
scope sway.
I just don't think it's something that should be in the game.
Attachments.
I don't think you should have attachments that counter something that's otherwise just generally quite frustrating and annoying.
I agree with that.
I generally think that visual sway, scope sway, and also just this general visual recoil needs massively toning down.
Yeah,
because
your gun levels will
resume
at week 2.
It really just feels like kind of a luck of the draw as to whether or not your shots are actually hitting where you want them to.
And you'll have faster leveling as well.
I also feel like this situation's made a little bit worse by the fact that most of the optics in the game are kind of ugly. A lot of them take up a lot of screen space, so even when you do have a red dot going on, it feels like you're getting visually occluded in some way, shape, or form. So between not having a truly centered dot for actually aiming down sight, and also general sway in all of the animations and scope sway and this kind of general inertia, I think lots of people are missing way more shots than they realize. And it took me a while to realize this until I created a full anti-weapon sway build. You can do this in the beta right now, and it's very easy to test. Just whack on all of the attachments that take away scope sway and visual sway, specifically the precision underbarrel and some of the heavier stocks, and you will notice that you're landing way more shots than you were before. I just don't think the core functionality of the game should be reliant on these attachments, and I think this is something that needs to be as soon.
That's a hard argument to make. Because what he's saying there is, I don't think the gun performing the way I want it to should be reliant on attachments. And if you took that argument and maybe applied it to something else, like time to kill, for example, that argument wouldn't make any sense, right? Like if I said, I want my weapon to kill faster, so the fact that rapid fire is an attachment shouldn't happen because I want rapid fire to be better. So it depends on whether this is a specific design decision for all of the weapons in the game that is going to continue, or whether this is a bug. Like, for example, if he just doesn't like the way weapons feel, doesn't like the way that sway is in this game, and you need an attachment for that, that's not necessarily broken. That just means he doesn't like the way weapons work. It doesn't necessarily mean that it shouldn't be an attachment. Am I making sense here? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Are you picking up what I'm like? Another example I could give that's a little more representative of what he's saying is if weapons have too much recoil and you're saying, well, I shouldn't have to use attachments to make the recoil less, that what he is saying there does not line up. Now, I agree with what he is saying, but it also could be, there's another side to that as well. It could just be the way that the games are. Am I making sense here? Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
The third big thing on my list is something that is both a frustration and also a balancing point that is quite hard to achieve. Now, you might think to yourself that shooting an opponent in the head should mean that they should die faster when they're not shot in the head.
Oh, I know where he's going with this.
Black Ops 6, that absolutely isn't the case at all. Not unless you're using a specific attachment.
Whoa.
In fact, if
I don't know if this is true.
If it's 4 shots to kill, it is 4 shots to kill everywhere. If it's 5 shots to kill, it's 5 shots to kill everywhere.
Is this true? Can anyone confirm this? I don't know this offhand. Is this true?
Only time that changes is if you add a specific barrel, which increases the headshot multiplier. Otherwise, headshots are pretty much worthless in this game. And if you didn't know this information, you've probably been like me for the last few days thinking, damn, it really felt like I got more headshots on that guy. Why have I lost this gunfight? Well, the answer is that headshots absolutely don't matter at all and they're completely useless. You very specifically have to have...
Okay, is this true? I don't know the answer to this, and this is definitely something I should know. And so what he's saying is there's no, unlike Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3, there's no multiplier difference to different parts of the body. So this is true? You guys are saying that this is true? No way. Yeah, that's dumb. So there's no headshot multiplier unless you have an attachment on.
The headshot multiplier barrel equipped to a weapon in order for headshots to make a noticeable difference to how a gun performs. Now, the reason behind this is that if they flatten the general damage that a weapon does, time to kill across the board is more consistent.
Yeah.
And whilst that is the case theoretically, some of the reasons I've already explained kind of illustrate that that's not always how things work. But the idea is that they want the TTK to be fairly readable and not have these huge variances in between headshots and no headshots.
So what I've heard is even with that headshot damage barrel, you still need to hit like every bullet to the head in order for it to actually make a difference. So I don't know. This kind of lines up with what I hear.
There's still got to be somewhat of a bonus for hitting somebody in the head. Part of the reason I think they've done all of this and flattened the general time to kill between body shots, chest shots, headshots, so on and so forth, is because the new Omni movement system is likely producing scenarios where people are being randomly shot in the head more often,
True.
but also randomly shot in different locations of their body. I've alluded to this a couple of times, but if there were, for example, lower leg multipliers, if you ended up hitting somebody...
Okay, so how do you feel about this? Is this a good or a bad thing? Like, I think there are certain weapons that need to have a differentiation. Right? Like, I feel like a sniper should be a one-shot kill to the head no matter what. So that should be a difference. And it should be like a one-shot kill to the chest and stuff. So there, and I'm pretty sure I've got hit markers to the legs with snipers. So there is a difference there. So it might be dependent on what weapon. I don't know.
Damage,
I don't know enough
the movement
information
meta
about
of the
this.
game, so to speak, would very quickly shift to diving backwards because it means that opponents would be more likely to hit you in the feet.
100% Naz, I agree with you. This is why betas exist, is to be able to have conversations like this. I don't think this is a bad video. This video is not hating on Black Ops 6. This video is, I like it. I actually like it a lot.
Generally, I understand that this is quite a complex problem, and I do feel as though they are trying to balance a very new and intricate movement system with trying to create consistent gunplay. But for me, there just absolutely has to be some form of headshot multiplier that isn't dependent on a specific barrel for it to achieve. Now, this doesn't even have to be universal across all weapons. I understand a lot of developers tend to avoid headshot multipliers on SMGs, for example, because they have high rates of fire, random hip fire spreads that end up being quite conducive to getting lucky headshots, and
which
can
actually I
completely
think
melt
makes
people.
sense.
You don't have to do that. But for assault rifles or something of that demeanor, they absolutely should have at least some headshot benefits for landing an opponent. So when you combine the fact that headshot multipliers aren't really working with the fourth point...
Let me give you an example of the problems headshot multipliers can cause. What game do I want to go back to? Black Ops 3. Did you guys play Black Ops 3? There is a attachment in that game. Is it called High Caliber? There's an attachment in that game that increases the headshot multiplier, I think, to 1.6. And with multiple different assault rifles, it would make them a 2-bullet kill. So instead of a 4 or a 5-bullet kill, they would be a 2-bullet kill. Which means you could walk around the corner, hit 2 headshots, and just boom, boom, dead. And that's a big problem on the other side of this. That's where headshot multipliers are a big, big, big problem. When you have a longer time to kill game like this, if you can literally just get lucky and kill someone, that is not good. So, you're talking about just headshot multipliers in general, Killer Shark? Modern Warfare 3 has headshot multipliers. I think they're like 1.2 times, and some of them, like on snipers, are higher. The Man of War was the exact weapon I was thinking about with that. Yes, there was actually a couple of them, but the Man of War was indeed the one I was alluding to in that situation.
Damage drop-off is really significant in this game. You get very, very strange gunplay. You're not being rewarded for hitting somebody accurately in places that you think it makes sense. But the big one, and this is the fourth one, is that damage drop-off ranges in this game seem to be hugely aggressive.
Yes.
Now, I haven't been able to do real
and that's
testing
why
on this yet.
This is why the Jackal is so good. It doesn't have those aggressive drop-offs that every other gun seems to.
In order to understand just how aggressive some of these damage drop-offs
M18
are,
High Caliber as well.
Experience of playing this game, it feels as though you're going from doing
M8.
30 damage at 10 meters, 30 damage at 15 meters, to suddenly doing 7 damage at 20 meters.
Yes.
It's really hard to explain.
That's the C9.
It just feels as though that the damage drop-off over range is absolutely colossal in play.
That's the C9, that's the M4, that's not the Jackal, and that's why the Jackal is so good. I don't think the AK is like that. And the aims might be, but it's so accurate that you might not notice
There have been
it.
a number of gunfights where I'm firing at an opponent and it seems like I've hit them 4 times and therefore they should die because it's 4 shots to kill, but they hit me 4 times and I die. And upon inspection and looking back at some of this footage, I've realized it's because I've started firing first when they're further away, and as they progressively close the gap because of the Omni movement system, it generally means that they end up getting the more beneficial time to kill because they end up shooting me at a closer range. These super aggressive damage drop-off ranges, combined with the fact that multipliers aren't really adding anything special to the game at the moment,
this makes a really good point.
Means that sometimes you get these instances where the closest man
Jaden,
wins.
thank you for the 100
biddies, dude. If you're the person
dude.
who starts shooting first, you might not be the person who necessarily ends up winning the gunfight.
Good morning to you too.
End up shifting drastically in terms of distance from when they started firing. They could get a better TTK than you did. So we have non-centered aim, we have weapon sway and animations, we have multipliers that aren't really helping your general gunfights, and also this super harsh damage drop-off effect. And all of that creates a fairly confusing scenario where gunplay, I feel at the moment, is...
So, from everything that he said, the ones that bother me and I think need to be changed the most are the strange damage drop-offs. I completely agree with that one. The centering thing I haven't tested, but if that's true, I would assume that should be fixed. The headshot one I am not sold on. I don't know enough to say that that should be fixed, but he must have one more thing because there's like 5 minutes left in the video.
The extent of how inconsistent the gunplay generally is has kind of been hidden by the fact that people are just flying into each other like Beyblades, because it means they aren't noticing some of the inconsistencies that players who are a little bit more sensitive to time to kill, a little bit more sensitive to core gameplay are starting to notice. You know, I'm noticing lots of scenarios now where the time to kill just feels really out of whack and really out of sync. But the next big thing on my list is arguably the most frustrating, because I really don't understand why developers do this, and it really annoys me when they do. At Call of Duty Next, all of the developers said on screen, they said we want attachments to be simple, we want...
This I might disagree with.
Attachments to only have upsides and not have downsides to simplify how these systems work in-game. And that sounds wonderful. I understand the reasoning behind this, and the only major downsides to attachments in the game right now are when you put substantially larger magazines on these weapons, and they slow down their movement.
And we've also learned that that is not true. That rapid fire, for example, displays no downsides, but it adds about 10% more recoil. Exclusive Ace showed that. So not all of those are true, but we'll come back to this.
See, that was what I thought. And then I ended up using some of these attachments and realized that absolutely all of these attachments in the game do have downsides.
Oh, okay, that is what he's saying. Okay, no, I agree with him.
About it. It took me a little while to realize this. It took me a little while to be a little bit more sensitive to some of the values I was seeing. But putting certain attachments on weapons very obviously changed how they worked. And not necessarily always in a good way. I was noticing that attachments...
This is a great video. This is one of the best like feedback videos I have seen for Black Ops 6. Straight up.
Often provide recoil compensation, were leading to slower aim down sight times, slower sprint to fire times. Even though, listed on the attachments list, it showed that there were no penalties for using any of these attachments. Likewise, using the rapid fire attachment very obviously seemed to change the damage drop-off of the weapon, meaning that it was losing...
I haven't heard that one.
...more damage over range than it was before. I'm actually fairly positive at this point that I can say that pretty much every attachment in the game actually does have a drawback on top of having positive.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that is a problem with the build or if that's going to be the way that it is in the final game.
They've done this because what's the point? At the end of the day, people like True Game Data, people like all of these platforms like Synthic, are just going to find out what these values are doing anyway at some point or another. All this actually does is
I have a theory for this. I have a feeling that they wanted to have the traditional system where all attachments have downsides as well. And then somewhere along the line, they're like, wait, why are we doing this? Changed it, and I think it should be that way. And maybe this build doesn't have that yet. But I could be wrong.
For regular players who aren't as in-depth with some of these things. If somebody attaches rapid fire and expects a faster fire rate,
and they
also aren't expecting the gun to kill people less lethally over range, because the game description doesn't show them this.
And you know what? The recoil one I can get on board with, because I think that's just obvious, because the recenter speed is going to be the same of the weapon and the fire rate goes up. It's going to have more recoil.
If they equip a foregrip that's supposed to make the gun more controllable, and then all of a sudden they're losing because their sprint to fire is really slow and their general ADS
And
speed
they
is
don't know, that's a
substantially
big
slower,
problem.
then they won't notice that because the game doesn't tell them that that is the case. So pretending that all of these attachments simply have upsides and don't have any drawbacks is just an annoying little lie, and it's something that needs to change. There's no point in doing this system. Just have one pro and one con. You
Yep.
don't have to change things massively. Just have things that balance and
I don't
make
even
sense.
think you need
And
to have the
arguably, even
cons.
get rid of some attachments. Things like
Yep.
rapid fire are never going to be balanced attachments in video games. At no point in any video
So this is something I've thought about a lot.
game can you massively increase the
Oop,
rate
you
of
dead.
fire and decrease the time to kill of a weapon without making it broken. So don't include it
Yeah, it makes it a crutch.
in the first place. And the final big thing for me is the general visual clarity of this game is absolutely horrific again.
I disagree
Now,
with this one.
I don't know how many times we need to repeat this mistake within this game engine, but I don't need loads of smoke and mirrors
Oh,
and
okay, yeah.
general distortion whenever I fire a gun. You see this a lot with certain weapons.
Okay, so the visibility of this game is probably one of the best that I've seen in the beta by far. But what he is saying is correct. Pay attention to when explosions happen, when he fires his weapon, the amount of smoke that goes around. And they've eliminated some of this in Modern Warfare 3 compared to Modern Warfare 2, but it is somewhat back in this game.
When
He
you
is
fire
correct.
a gun and you see this little gas blowback and all these animations and effects. Bro, we are playing COD. It's a first-person shooter. I'm watching geezers sprint backwards. I don't care about realism, and these realism effects, all they achieve is making the game visually more annoying. I could also touch on the fact that lots of the colors in the game aren't particularly that great, and the game has a weird blue hue, and also the fact that they've given character skins certain green textures that are also the same texture as grass. But that's another video entirely.
I don't necessarily
There's just
agree with
lack
that
of
one.
clarity
But
all over the place for no particular reason. It's a Black Ops game. It's supposed to be more arcadey. We don't need all of
Yes.
these IWA Modern Warfare over-the-top animations and things that try to make the game look more realistic.
Completely
When in
agree.
reality, they just make the gameplay worse. So folks, that's about it for this video. If you've wondered why the
Completely agree
gunplay
with
in Black
that.
Ops 6 has actually felt kind of terrible, or if you're only just starting to realize in the fact that it actually isn't as good as it feels, it's because we don't have truly centered aim, we do have general sway in animations, multipliers don't make sense, damage drop-off is super aggressive, attachments are lying to you, and there's lots of smoke in the game, for no particular reason.
the smoke doesn't bother me. The attachment thing definitely needs to be addressed. The center definitely needs to be addressed. And the amount of sway in the movement in games, something needs to be done about that. I agree. Yeah.
All of these things are very fixable, and some of them actually do make sense to an extent,
Yes.
as explained with some of the general damage multipliers. But there are some things that don't make sense, like not having centered aim. And if this game is truly going to feel crispy by the time it releases in October, these things need to be resolved immediately. So folks, that's about it for this video. If you enjoyed it, drop a sub, consider liking.
So from what he is saying, I think he's in the same boat as me, where he's actually enjoying this game and he wants it to succeed. And he has noticed some few small details about the gunplay that need to be fixed. And almost all of them I agree with. I didn't know that he was going that direction with the attachments. I thought he was going to say that it is a bad thing to only have attachments do positive things, which you could argue, but that's not what he said. He said that they're lying to us about attachments. And I don't know if that's because it's the build or whatever it is, but I think he made a lot of really good points here. Great video. Go check it out. The Tactical Brit. Let me know what you think. All right. All right, dudes.